Well, welcome everyone. I'm Anna Felton. I'm on the litigation section board, and the litigation section is so proud to bring this important speaker here today, Janice Litvin. By way of introduction, I want to just tell you that Janice is on a mission to help leaders and teams banish burnout in their organizations. So everyone, their employees and the leaders, come to work happy, healthy, and ready to work. She achieves this mission through her keynote speeches, workshops, and accountability groups. Janice has a best-selling book, Banish Burnout Toolkit, which helps you and your teams learn how to manage stress, prevent burnout. The result is a long-lasting behavior change. What makes Janice unique is her 10 years in IT, 20 years of technology recruiting, the study of psychology, and experience changing her own behavior. She also has a lifetime of hearing stories from multiple attorneys in her family, including her brother. So going forward from stressed out and negative to happy and healthy, please help me welcome Janice Litvin presenting Banish Burnout, Move from Stress to Success. And today's part will be focused on recognizing burnout. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you, Ann Wolf, for inviting me and helping me get coordinated. So as Anna said, I help leaders and teams banish burnout in their organizations through programs like this, and also 6-hour deep dive workshops if somebody really wanted to go much deeper, and you will see how that could work later as we go through today. Everything I share today will be focused on helping you attorneys identify your patterns of behavior, which Ann alluded to a couple of minutes ago. And the whole purpose is to make sure that you are able to perform your duties as an attorney. Then, as Ann said, I'll be returning on November 17th at 2:00 for your MCLE Spectacular to give you the other side of the picture and present action steps. Let's start with a really fun icebreaker. When you think of the word stress, what is one word that comes to you? Please put in the chat. And I think you all know how to use the chat by now with all the Zoom meetings. So anxiety, I have 2 anxieties: work, deadlines, cortisol. Tara says sleeplessness. J. Jasmine says overwhelming. Marta says feeling tired all the time. Yes. Yes, sleep and feeling tired. Suzanne, every day. You don't realize it, Suzanne, but I'll ask you another similar question later that has to do with how often you feel stressed, but that's good to know. Daniel, overwork. Christopher, increased blood pressure. Yes, absolutely. John says that's why God gave us alcohol. Okay, that's funny. Again, sleep. Oh, it sounds like a lot of you lose sleep, which we don't want to have happen. Okay, thank you so much. Now I'm going to give you, migraines, Christina. Yes, we're going to talk about migraines in just a moment. So now let's do another fun chat. When you think about the COVID, now we all know that the COVID has been one of the most horrible things that has hit our world, not just our country or our state, but the whole world. When you think about the COVID-19, is there any silver lining in the ramifications? Is there any silver lining to working from home, not having to commute? Are there any silver linings to you of the COVID? Smaller commute, says Corrine. Pajama pants, Jennifer, yes. Better connected with my family. Less commute, more flex, more time with family, yes. A beautiful yard, yes. We have also a beautiful yard because of that. And more time with family. Yes, Christina. John says exercising at home, yes. And no driving in traffic, yes. Oh my gosh. It was so weird the first few months where you would drive up and down 680 and there was never commute traffic. Dustin, more sleep. Okay, good. I'm glad you're sleeping more. Okay, thank you so much. So let me ask you this. Do you ever have a stressful day? Does every day seem like a stressful day? How often do you feel stressed out? Well, last week, I had one of those days. I was so stressed out. First thing in the morning, I receive a text from my managing partner of my huge law firm. And she wants me to come to her Zoom room first thing. And of course, I'm thinking, oh no, what's wrong now? What have I done now? And she tells me that my billable hours are down for the quarter and I need to get those ramped up. And I'm like, well, I already work 50 hours a week. What else should I do? And then in the midst of all that, my husband comes into my home office because, as you know, the lines are blurred between home and office. And he wants to argue about cleaning out the garage. And I'm like, now's not the time to talk about the garage, but I will meet you on Saturday at 10 in the garage. And then to top it all off, I decide in the afternoon to take a little break, go to Starbucks and get my favorite drink, the cold brew. But when I get there, the line is really long. And the customer at the counter is a mom with a 3-year-old. Honey, do you want the blueberry scone or the strawberry scone? Honey, do you want chocolate milk or lemonade? Honey, 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 honey. Oh my goodness. Do you ever have a stressful day? Does every day seem like a stressful day? How often do you feel stressed out? So based on my 9 years of researching this question and asking hundreds of clients this question, the average response is 75% of the time people feel stressed out all the time. I mean, stress is all around us, especially for you attorneys. It comes from long hours, meeting deadlines with your filings and preparing for trial, or that the Kardashians are canceling their show. Oh no, what are we going to do without them? But seriously, stress does seem like it's all around us. And the problem is we take it all in, but we don't have a way to get it all out. And then we explode into the big B, burnout. Now, we can't stop all the stress from happening, but we can change the way we react. And today, as Anne said, I'm going to talk to you about the first half of the solution, which is identifying your behaviors that can get in the way of your being able to do your job in a sane and peaceful manner. My book, Banish Burnout Toolkit, which the anniversary of its release is this week, 1-year anniversary, is available for you to purchase at my website. And I will be posting this link again at the end, so you don't need to worry about getting it written down so quickly. But in that book, everything I talk about today is in the book, and it's actually a workbook, so you can begin to work the steps. Now, Anne, if you don't mind, bringing up the first poll, what is your position in your law firm? Solo practitioner? Are you an associate in a firm, a partner in a firm, or an attorney in a corporate setting? Please take a moment, and we cannot vote, obviously. And by the way, I've known all kinds of attorneys. My brother is an attorney in a firm down in Texas. He does employment defense. And I have another friend that does general litigation here in Contra Costa County. So I can't tell if anybody is voting, Anne, but
Sorry.
How many?
Got 86%.
Okay, give it another 2 or 3 seconds and then let's look at the results.
Okay, a couple more of you. Let's go. Come on, 100%. All right, I think we're good there. And the poll, do you see the poll, Janice?
I don't see the results.
Share results.
Oh, there we go. Okay, 42%. Oh, that's interesting to me. Solo practitioners, 36% are partners in firms. Oh, wow. 21% are associates and 0% are in corporate. So we kind of assumed that we wouldn't have corporate today, but I wasn't 100% sure. But it is interesting to me that there are a lot of solo practitioners. Okay, that helps me focus my comments. Thank you so much for voting. Excellent. So in talking about stress, there are all kinds of stressors. As you know I don't have to break them all down for you. There's life-threatening medical emergencies, financial disaster with the threat of losing your home during especially the first few months of the COVID. I call it the COVID. Or living with a teenager. And based on my research, there are 2 very scientific types of stress. I call them big stress or small stress. you know what I mean. Small stress could be long lines on the in Starbucks, or a lot of traffic on 680 or 24, whatever freeway you're near. Or it could be a disagreement with a colleague or friend that seems small, but sometimes they can erupt into a volcanic eruption and you and your friend aren't speaking for months. That happened to me a few years ago. So there's just all kinds of stress. So which one stresses you out? Is it long lines of Starbucks, problems with a filing, issues about billable hours, competing to make partner? What about a little identity theft? So this is a true story. I received this email a few years ago and I'm like, oh, this is weird. I got this email from Apple about this book, but we buy all our books on Amazon. We don't buy books on Apple. And I'm like, should I or shouldn't I? Should I click or shouldn't I click? I mean, when I got the email from the Prince of Nigeria asking me to deposit $4 million into my account, I knew not to click. But on this day, I clicked. And you can imagine how frustrated I was when I'm giving away all kinds of information, name, address, all my debit, credit card, and then suddenly it says social security number. And I'm like, I think this is spam. I don't think they need my social security number. So as you can imagine, I logged off my email, shut down my computer as if that was going to save anything, and got on the phone with Apple. And the nice young man, Dimitri, was like, oh, yeah, we knew about that. I'm like, well, why didn't anybody tell us? But to make a long story short, I learned a lot of lessons that day. Obviously, I learned not to click on emails. And if I'm in doubt, pick up the phone and call Apple and say, did you send me this email? And interestingly, in the last few weeks, I've gotten a lot more of these where people have spent money on my credit card for Apple Music, Amazon Music, and it's getting really crazy out there. I've had to change a couple of different cards in the last month. But the point is that now that I have perspective on how getting very, very upset every time a stressor comes at us, it causes us the inability to be as cognitively sharp as we really want to be. Because while we're upset, yes, this person, Dimitri, was talking to me and I was writing down everything he said, but I wasn't able to really think through what he was saying and think of other important questions. And so it's really important to learn that when we get extremely upset, it impedes our ability to think clearly, is what I'm trying to say. And I've learned since this event how to change the way I interact and how to interrupt my negative thoughts and say to myself, does this situation really warrant this degree of angst and anxiety? If not, let it go. And I'm going to teach you between today and the November 17th session exactly how to do that, so that I will be a little more in control of my emotions. So how do you react to stress? Are you the person that's screaming at everybody around you and snapping at your family and yelling on the phone every time there's a problem? Or do you take things in stride and go, oh, that's okay. You rear-ended me on 680. That's okay. I don't mind wasting a lot of time now with the auto body shop and DMV and the insurance company. That's okay. Yes, I see swearing helps. That's okay. Now, I used to be this person constantly screaming, knots in my stomach, complaining all the time to anybody that would listen, complaining about things, to calling different friends all the time and letting things go on. And every time I complained to a friend, I got upset again. And one day my husband and son, when my son was 10, he's now 27, he said to me, Mom, do you realize you stay upset for like a week over every little thing? And you know, when a child notices something, you do want to pay attention. So I'm not perfect, but I'm getting closer. And so that's my goal for myself and for you today, is to learn how to get a little calmer in the midst of all the stress. So how low do you go and how long do you stay there? What I mean by that is, how upset do you get and how long do you tear your hair out and complain? Or when do you move into solution mode and get out of the freak out mode? Now, I'm not naive, and I know that stress in a law firm or in a law practice, especially in a high volume practice, can be intense, can be debilitating, and it's not the same thing as fighting traffic or even a little identity theft. I know it can be relentless. You're trying to take care of your clients. You're trying to take care of your coworkers. If you're a partner, you're trying to help your associates. If you're an associate, you're trying to support the clients and the partners. And now things are so much more complicated with trying to work remotely. And then there's the whole issue of dealing with the mandates about the vaccine. On top of which, we're always in an always on kind of lifestyle with our cell phones. And it was Dr. Hans Selye, one of the original stress researchers, who taught that stress comes from uncertainty, lack of information, or loss or lack of control. And Gallup has also gone on to say that high volume of work can be stressful, no control over our work, and micromanaging, and there are a number of other indicators. And of course, this past 18 months, we certainly have had a lot of uncertainty. We still do, a lot of confusing information and no control. But Dr. Hans Selye went on to teach us that it's not the stress that kills us, it's our reaction to the stress. So Anne, if you would bring up our next poll, how often do you feel stressed out? Almost never, occasionally, at least once a week, or on most days? I'm guessing I know the answer, but I'm so curious to see what you say. And let me know when you have like 80%.
We're almost there.
Okay.
We're got a couple more people. Okay, and pull. There we go.
Okay, that's what I expected. I expected the most to be on most days, 59%, but it's interesting to note that 25% say once a week and 16% say occasionally. I would really love to talk to the 16%. Oh, I'd love to talk to all of you, but I'm so curious to know how some of you are not so stressed out. So let's look at a couple of numbers. You probably have read that attorneys report feeling burned out 50% of the time, according to Bloomberg Law. With average work weeks, 58 hours a week and 52 hours of billable hours. So exactly what are we talking about when I say burnout? And a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between stress and burnout? Well, the World Health Organization declared in 2019 that burnout was an illness, an occupational syndrome caused by chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And what happens when we start to get so stressed, losing sleep and getting anxious? We start to get physiological reactions. We start to get migraine headaches, the stress hormone cortisol levels go up, the immune system goes down, and we develop a number of conditions, including coronary artery disease. So what are the signs of burnout? Well, some include, oh, I just went too fast. Physical, emotional exhaustion. We're more sensitive to feedback. Sometimes we don't feel as effective as we know we can be and are. We start to avoid. Do you ever wake up and say, oh no, I don't want to open my email? Or we start to disengage. Now, how can you tell if you are burning out? Here are some things to look at. Are you snapping at others, especially your family? Do you have any digestive issues? Do you just have these angry outbursts? Do you have trouble sleeping? A lot of you mentioned sleep when I asked earlier. And do you feel resentful? And what is the impact on your organization as a whole? Well, the culture suffers, the customers suffer, because if you're snapping at people, you're going to snap at a client. And the bottom line suffers to $125 to $190 billion in annual healthcare burnout spending. And this was very personal to me because I was there. As I keep alluding to, I was that angry, overreacting person, complaining, knots in my stomach, hard to live with, taking things so personally all the time and being so negative and critical and unhappy. And I went through a big change, which I'm going to describe to you in a couple of moments. And what I want to tell you is that I have found that when you dig in to understand how the stress happens and how to recognize it, that's when you can begin to change. Awareness is the first step to change, which you probably have heard. And when you do that, you will impact everyone around you, your coworkers, your clients, and your family. So how did I make this happen in my life? How did I identify that I needed to change? And then how did I make the change? Well, interestingly, it happened at a party, at a family reunion on the East Coast. There I am with my mother. Before I tell you how negative she can be, I want to tell you the positives. My mother and I were very, very close. I was the youngest daughter out of 4 children, and we were very close. She was very, very intelligent. She demanded everyone make all A's. She went back to school when she was 50, and of course she made all A's, and she became an accountant with the IRS. And she was very demanding and critical. Even so, the love got all tangled up with the negativity and the criticism. So it was a very complicated relationship. But as you can see there, we were dancing, we were laughing, we were having a really fun time at this party. So we decided to sit down and have a little break, drink a little water. And suddenly across the room, we see 2 of the females chatting, Marcia and Marlene. It's a party, it's loud. You can tell they're just having a little party chat, but she decided to turn on her negative gear. And she said, I wonder what they're talking about with their heads all huddled together, with that face. And I was like, whoa, what is up? Why are you so angry? Why are you so negative? Why do you have to be so critical? And in that moment, I was hit over the head with a bolt of lightning. And I realized that I had inherited my mother's feelings of rejection and all her negative behaviors. And it was like watching an actor on a stage, her words breathing life into all the thoughts that had been plaguing me my entire adult life. And right then and there, I said to myself, you have a choice to make. You can continue on as you already are, being very negative and critical of yourself and everyone, or you can make a change. And I said yes to change. I said, I am going to figure out what I need to do to make a change. And you know, when you grow up in that environment with a very negative, demanding, critical parent, you don't know any different because you're the child and that's your perfect, loving, I use the word perfect loosely, your loving home. But you don't know that the behavior in that home might be unusual or not positive until you grow up and move away and start to connect with and interact with a lot of other people. So I was tired of always being angry and irritable and taking things too personally and feeling rejected. So I made the choice to figure out what I needed to do so that I could become a happier version of myself, which took analyzing my thoughts. And I'm going to teach you the tools that I've developed to help you analyze your thoughts. Through this process, I learned a lot of different things, a lot of lessons. And one thing that I learned was the importance of emotional intelligence. The World Economic Forum declared that emotional intelligence was more important than technical skills. And I think you will agree with me that most people get promoted for technical skills, billable hours, knowledge of the law, the ability to win cases and negotiate positive settlements. Sometimes people aren't taught emotional intelligence. Some people have it instinctively, but some people don't. And so that's one of the first keys. The first step of emotional intelligence is knowing yourself. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So how do you change? How do you go from this super negative, angry person to someone who's a little calmer and takes things a little calmer and tries to look for the positive? So one of the things I discovered is that when you look at your neural pathways as defined by neuroscientists and get out what I call the virtual pickaxe and become aware of the way you behave and the way you think, that's when you can begin to change. You just have to be willing to do the work, and then I will give you the toolkit so that you can make that change. And all those messages you received growing up, like that homework is messy, do that over, that's not perfect enough. You're going out in that? Orange is not your color. You made all A's last semester. Why aren't you making all A's this semester? Your brother's making all A's. When you constantly receive that barrage of negativity meshed in with the love, it's confusing for a child. And that's how you develop limiting beliefs. You believe what your parents tell you because they're your guides, they're the source of all your knowledge. And so how that gets translated in your psyche is, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough. When in reality, you are good enough. You just may not know it as you grow from child to adult. And so what I hope to teach you is how to handle your stress so you don't burn out. Called cognitive behavior therapy that was co-developed by Dr. Albert Einstein. I'm sorry, Dr. Albert Ellis, not Albert Einstein. And he taught that we can't change the past, so we change how we are thinking, feeling, and behaving today. And this process will have a dramatic impact on you and everyone around you. And so whether your stressor is fighting traffic and getting really angry about that, or one of your cases, the way we react and the way we behave are rooted in the same patterns of behavior. And that behavior comes from your thoughts, which control your feelings and your habits. So it starts with your thoughts. So how do you react to stress? Well, the first thing we do is we look at our physical reactions to stress. So for me, I keep talking about knots in my stomach. Put in the chat, what are your physical reactions to stress? Anybody have any physiological elevated heart rate? I've heard sweaty palms, eating peanut butter. Yes, eating. Oh, that's 2 eatings. Heart pounding, nausea, Anna Felton says. Headache, jaw, tense neck. Yes. Headaches, feeling tired, Tara. John, anger. Yes, right. Christopher, blood pressure goes up. Yes. Now with the Apple Watch, you can actually take your blood pressure. Suzanne, oh my gosh, wanting to cry. Yes. Anne says inability to focus, feel like I can't breathe. Yes, we're going to talk about breathing in just a moment. So yes, here's the thing, and the reason I wanted you to articulate what your physical reactions are, sometimes that's the only clue that you're upset. Let me give you an example, and I think you'll all agree with this. Have you ever been in a meeting? Let's say you're strategizing a case with your partners or your coworkers, and you give a suggestion, especially when you're an associate, and somebody, I don't know why, someone gets really negative and says, oh no, that won't work. We don't do things like that. Well, that happened to me a couple of years ago. And in the moment, I had that heart pounding, knots in my stomach, but I wasn't going to say anything. I was the junior person on this board, and I stayed quiet, and I thought I'll deal with it later, and I forgot all about it. An hour and a half later, I felt those knots in my stomach again, and I'm like, why do I still have knots in my, what's up with the knots in my stomach? Oh yeah, someone was rude to me in a meeting. If you don't pay attention to the fact that you are having a stress reaction and you just keep taking it all in, then you will explode. You will snap at somebody at the wrong time, whether it's your family or a client. You will have a reaction sooner or later. So it's important to pay attention. And what happens when you ignore those signs? You just completely explode. So we look at this process that I talked about, which is about reframing your thinking. So now let's look at the first tool. So this, again, is all about identifying your thoughts and patterns so that you can change them. And again, on the 17th, we'll get into how to do the change. So let's start with stop. What do you think STOP stands for? STOP stands for stop, take a breath, observe, and then proceed. Stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. And in the handout that I send in a day or two, you'll get a copy of this poster, so to speak, and it's also in my book. And I want you to consider printing it out in color and putting it on your bulletin board or your refrigerator or something that you look at to remind you to stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed when something happens. And let me tell you how it works. The stop, as the name infers, gets you to stop and pay attention. That deep breath actually instigates the parasympathetic nervous system to help actually calm you down. The observe gets you to sit up and pay attention and say, wait, any legs broken? Anybody in the hospital? Am I losing my house? If there's nothing that extreme, then I don't need to get this upset. And then proceed. And so what happens when you're upset and you're in the midst of the reaction? Now, let me say this. It's normal to react. We're human beings with human emotions. It's normal to react to a stressor. What's not normal is getting extremely upset. And so while you're upset, the reaction is living in the amygdala, the fear or the fight, flight, or freeze part of the brain. When you do the observe step, you're taking that reaction and moving it on up to the prefrontal cortex, the rational executive functioning part of the brain. And that's where then you can make the decision how I'm going to proceed. Am I going to start yelling at somebody, or am I going to calmly say, would you mind repeating that? I wasn't quite sure I understood what you said, rather than screaming and yelling. And it was Rollo May, who you probably heard of in school, psychiatrist and author of Man's Search for Himself, who taught that human freedom comes from the ability to pause so that you can breathe before you respond and think before you react. So that's what STOP is all about. Now let's talk about the stress audit. The purpose, again, as we've been talking about, the purpose of the stress audit is to make you aware of yourself and your reactions. So when someone yelled at you in a meeting, first of all, what happened? How did you feel physically, as we've been talking? How did you feel emotionally? Hurt, angry, sad, frustrated? What did you say, if anything? What was your exacerbating behavior, meaning how upset did you get? How long did you stay there? And what, if any, addictive behavior did you engage in? Did you go home and eat a gallon of ice cream? Did you drink a bottle of wine? Did you scream and yell at your family? What happened? And when you write with pen and paper, by the way, it initiates a different part of the brain. And while you're writing, things that bothered you in the past, there are little triggers. Everything that happens to us in life stays with us. It's just like if you break a major bone, that crack, even though it gets repaired, it's never 100%. Yes, it gets repaired with titanium or whatever they do now, but your body knows that you had a break forever. It's the same with our emotions. Every time something traumatic happens in your life, it stays with us. And traumas create those cracks. And then a trigger can trigger the emotional reaction from the past, and you overreact today. I'll give you a very short story. It's kind of a mundane story, but will illustrate the point. So one day, my sister-in-law came over. I had a little cold. This was a year or two ago. Totally true story. I had a little cold. I'm sniffling, coughing, sneezing. She goes, oh, what's going on? I said, oh, I have a little cold. She goes, oh, do you have allergies? I hit the roof. It didn't seem like such a big deal comment, but I started screaming at her. No, I don't have allergies. I told you I have a cold. And after a couple of minutes, I thought, that was kind of mean. I think I better figure out what's going on. So she and my husband went outside to have their private time. And I went in my room, in my bedroom, and started writing how I felt. Why did I overreact to that stupid comment about the allergies? And from the writing, the more you write, the more the old stuff comes out. From that writing, I figured out that when my father 20 years ago was on his last legs, I was sick with a cold and I couldn't go home to Houston to see him. And I went to a doctor and said, I need an antibiotic. And she said, you have allergies. You don't need anything. And I started screaming and crying at this doctor. I need an antibiotic. My father's dying and I need to go home. And there I am, fast forward to 20 years later, and my sister-in-law makes this comment about the allergies, and I flip out because that trauma of being so upset about my father dying and the issue about the allergies stayed with me. And I didn't even realize it was still bothering me. I'd completely forgotten about that whole thing, but it was still there. So that's the beauty of writing. And when you first do the writing, again, the anxiety is in the amygdala. When you go back and reread what you wrote, that's when the prefrontal cortex can start analyzing and say, oh, you need to look at this. Now, if someone ever says the word allergies again to me, it's not going to bother me because I'm aware that that was the trigger in the past. So all of that is tool number 1 in my book. Tool number 2 is know your stress. The most typical reactions are overreaction and overgeneralization. So for example, there's all kinds of things that stress us out. Long lines, we've already talked about, waiting on hold for support, expectations to be perfect, expectations from the partners, the judges, your coworkers, not having the seat at a table as a woman, and keeping up with all the latest laws and cases. So all those stressors can cause an extreme reaction. And here's that amygdala I talked about. Here's some overreactions. I'm annoyed when the partner texted me to come to her office first thing in the morning. That connects to that story I told you earlier. I'm annoyed when my manager micromanages me. I'm annoyed when my managing partner constantly gives me a problem to solve at the last minute. And then I'm going to have to work overtime. I'm annoyed when my client constantly complains. Here's some more. I hope you see that I really put a lot of thought into the legal field. I get angry when I receive wrong information about a case or a detail like a filing deadline. I get angry when my boss doesn't acknowledge my hard work. I get angry when my ideas are ignored. I get angry when I'm blamed for a problem that was not my fault. So this is not an excuse to dump. It's just an example of what causes us to get extremely angry. So those are overreactions. Now let's talk about overgeneralizations. My client always complains. I always make mistakes when. The paralegal and admin staff always make mistakes on my pleadings. My manager always criticizes me in front of others. My manager only comments on the negatives of my performance. What is the flaw in these statements? If you saw the word always, you would be correct. So anytime you see the word always or never, or you catch yourself saying always or never, chances are you're overgeneralizing. And one way to catch yourself in these overreactions is to ask yourself some questions. Am I responding emotionally or rationally? Am I overreacting? What evidence is there that my response is accurate? Am I worried or upset about something else? So all of this is about becoming aware when you overreact or overgeneralize. Now let's talk very briefly about shoulds. I should be able to handle all of my problems easily. I should be better at managing my time. I should be more organized. I should not make mistakes. I should be able to strategize effectively. I should be a better negotiator. When you use the word should, it's a demeaning of yourself. It's a put down of yourself, and it's a criticism of yourself. Now, again, next week or next month on the 17th, I'm going to give you the counteraction to these should statements. And we'll talk a lot more about how to handle the shoulds and the overreactions that I just described. Let's talk very briefly about accountability partners. Accountability partners, the beauty and the value of accountability partners as they can help you see yourself. It could be a partner, it could be a spouse, it could be a coworker, it could be a best friend at work, or a best friend in your personal life. And they can hold you accountable for your behavior, for yourself. So I really recommend that you consider getting an accountability partner for your stress. And how do you choose an accountability partner? You want someone more experienced than you, someone you can trust that won't turn things against you, someone that is not in competition with you, obviously, and someone that is not threatened by you. And here's what you can do with an accountability partner. You can get clear about your goals. You can make sure, well, first of all, you want to make sure they have time. You want to commit to everything they suggest. Even if you don't agree, take their opinion and try it out and do it quickly. And then commit to being, making progress, not just being perfect, but making progress toward your goals. And what all of these tools do that we've been talking about is help you move the reaction from the fear center of the brain to the prefrontal cortex and teach you how to reframe your reactions. So awareness brings knowledge. We talked about stop, take a breath, observe, proceed, and doing a stress audit. We talked about how to recognize overreactions and overgeneralizations. We briefly talked about shoulds, and we briefly talked about accountability partners. In my book, there's a lot more detail about all of these topics. So the only way to know yourself is to get to know yourself. And interestingly, it was Socrates who said, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. So all of these techniques that I've talked about give you control, which is one of the problems with stress, is we feel out of control. And I want you to learn how to gain more control in your life and in your emotional life so that you can stay grounded and communicate in a rational way with clear expectations of yourself and those around you. So just imagine spending a few minutes every day working on yourself. It doesn't have to be hours. It can be 10 minutes a day in the morning or in the evening, or on the weekend, whenever you have time to do a little journaling, to work the stress audit, to practice stop. We don't want you to burn out. And believe it or not, your coworkers, your partners, your associates, no one wants you to burn out. The judges, believe it or not, they don't want you to burn out, because when you burn out, they lose a whole level of productivity, plus then you're hurt. And when I say hurt, I mean in every way you can imagine. We want you to know yourself well enough so that you can identify when you're beginning to get too stressed, and then you can take action. And as I keep saying, on November 17th at 2:00 at the annual MCLE Spectacular, I will give you more tools and the other half of all the tools I've been talking about so that you can complete the cycle of preventing burnout. My wish for you is that you will begin to do some work on yourself, pay attention to your physiological reactions to stress, so you will know when you're having a stress reaction, that you pay attention to the signs we talked about, whether you're emotionally exhausted, snapping at people, having trouble sleeping, having trouble eating, or eating too much. All those indicators will tell you that you're beginning to get too stressed. And then you'll become aware of your stressors and the fact that your stress might be impeding your ability to do your job. You are in charge of your mental health. You have choices, and now you have tools. What questions do you have? Please put them in the Q&A, or if you accidentally put them in the chat, that's okay too. And while you're putting your questions in there, I will put here again the link for obtaining my book. Are there any questions? Do you see any questions, Anne?
I do not.
Okay.
Nothing in the Q&A. Gave us a lot to think about, though, for sure.
Yes. So, and as Anne said, I will be sending you a recap in an email probably by tomorrow. I like to get these things done quickly. And so we'll recap the main points, and Anne is recording. And I want you to know that you can keep in touch with me a few different ways. I send out a blog post once a week about something related to what we've talked about, stress or burnout. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to post once a week. And again, this is how you can obtain my book. please feel free to email me anytime, ask me any questions, give me any feedback. I'm really happy to help you. And I'm so pleased that I had this opportunity to talk with you as attorneys. Please do keep in touch. If you know of any other groups or individual law firms that would like my help, please let me know.
Okay, let's see.
Oh,
Okay.
Marta, thank you for getting the book on the Kindle. Wonderful.
Go, Marta.
Yeah, thank you. Please keep in touch and let me know your favorite parts of the book. Thank you, Tara. Kindle Unlimited, Marta. Oh, wonderful.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Janice. I knew your presentation was going to be great. I just didn't have any idea how really great it was going to be. This was fabulous. Thank you very much. And thank you, litigation section, for putting this on. And everyone, have a great rest of your day. And I like Suzanne Boucher posted in the chat, choose happy.
I have a whole thing called Find Your Happy, but we're not doing that today, but I have blogged about it. You can read it on my website.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Catherine.
Did someone raise their hand? Who raised their hand? Let's see before we let go. I can't see. If you have a question, it's got to go in the chat. So, okay, great. Thank you, everyone. See you soon. If not, at the MCLE Spectacular, and follow up with Janice at 2:00 on the 17th. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And especially Anna too.
And Anna. There you go. Bye, guys.